Buckle up, because what I am about to unpack is the kind of revelation that makes the internet collectively drop its jaw. The newly surfaced, previously unreleased footage from the explosive documentary The Reckoning has unleashed a storm nobody was prepared for. While everyone thought they understood the origins of Sean Diddy Combs' empire, this material pulls the curtain back and shows something far darker. Something personal. Something that has social media spiraling as if the entire narrative of his rise has been rewritten overnight. The footage suggests that the violence people accused him of directing toward others may have actually begun at home, with his own mother, Janice Combs. And the allegations? They are not whispers. They are not speculation. They are first-hand recollections from people who lived in the same neighborhood, walked the same halls, and saw the fractures forming long before he entered the spotlight. As these revelations circulate online, users on X, TikTok, and Instagram are collectively losing their minds, stitching videos and posting threads that read like crime scene breakdowns. Some creators are even calling this the plot twist of the decade, because according to several insiders, these incidents did not happen once. They allegedly happened repeatedly, turning a family home into a quiet battlefield that nobody dared to expose. For years, the public believed Janice shaped Diddy into who he became, but this new framework flips everything upside down. Because if the footage is true, then perhaps Janice was not the architect of the monster people accuse him of being. Perhaps she was the first one who lived through the chaos. And suddenly, her public behavior throughout the years begins to make an unsettling kind of sense. In The Reckoning, the documentary that has the entire industry trembling, one particular insider shattered the silence: Kirk Burroughs. A man who did not merely know Diddy, he built with him. He worked alongside him at Uptown Records, then co-founded Bad Boy Records. If anyone is holding the real skeleton keys to this empire, it is Kirk. And when he finally spoke, the tone in his voice was not casual storytelling. It was the tone of someone remembering something he wished he had never seen. In the documentary, Kirk recalls the first time he witnessed Diddy turn violent toward Janice, and how completely stunned she appeared, as if even she never believed things would escalate to that point. That single memory cracked open an entire chapter of their past that had been sealed shut until now. And the internet? It is treating this like a live-action betrayal arc. Commenters are comparing this revelation to the moment when a villain's origin story gets rewritten mid-season, transforming everything that came before it. People are questioning, theorizing, stitching timelines together, asking whether this was the start of a lifelong pattern. Because if this was happening inside the home, before fame, before cameras, before power, then what does that say about everything that followed? What else has been hidden? What else has been twisted into a neat public narrative while the truth rotted underneath? This is not simply a documentary moment. This is an entire cultural earthquake. The more we dig into this story, the darker it becomes, because the tragedy that reshaped public perception of Diddy did not begin with fame, lawsuits, or celebrity feuds. It began long before that. The horrifying 1991 stampede at the City College of New York, where 9 innocent people lost their lives, was already a stain most people hoped would never resurface. And yet, here we are, seeing it through a completely new lens. Back then, Diddy had oversold a charity basketball event to the point of chaos, and Janice, his own mother, was terrified. She knew the consequences could be catastrophic. She knew her son was playing with fire. But according to people close to the family, when she tried to warn him, when she tried to pull him back from the edge, all she received in return was a strike across the face. Social media is erupting over this revelation, calling it a betrayal of the highest degree, because this was not the fear of a mother overreacting. This was the fear of a mother watching her son spiral into something she could not control. And just when you think the story cannot become more disturbing, insiders are claiming the documentary barely scratched the surface. There were entire sections that never made the final cut, reportedly because they were too intense, too personal, too explosive. One of those missing segments allegedly explored Diddy's relationship with Janice in unsettling detail, so unsettling that eyewitnesses described their dynamic as resembling a slave-master environment. The internet is calling it the most alarming twist yet, because suddenly every public appearance, every forced smile between them over the years takes on a new, haunting meaning. What looked like a supportive mother-son duo might have actually been a controlled, silenced, and traumatized woman trying to survive her own household. But honestly, maybe we should have seen it coming. This is not the first time whispers of this behavior have surfaced. Diddy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, had been sounding alarms long before anyone believed him. He once revealed that Kirk Burroughs confided in him about Diddy striking Janice, long before documentaries and exposés made headlines. And Gene did not stop there. He described moments he personally witnessed, moments in public, where Diddy allegedly laid his hands on his mother. But the world brushed it off. People shrugged, laughed, dismissed the claims as exaggeration or bitterness. Meanwhile, the truth was simply waiting for its moment to break through the facade. And let us be honest, the public never extended grace to Janice. For years, she became a scapegoat, the internet labeling her as the mastermind behind Diddy's questionable behavior. Old interviews painted her as the architect of chaos, the woman who raised him in an environment that many believed built the monster. But now, those assumptions are crumbling fast. In another documentary released earlier this year, one of Diddy's childhood friends, Tim Patterson, described scenes from the Combs household that sound more like a wild after-hours club than a home where children lived. According to him, Janice often hosted adult parties filled with alcohol, drugs, and questionable characters, pimps, hustlers, and partygoers, while young Diddy and his friends wandered through hallways where they could accidentally open a door and find naked adults engaged in explicit acts. Patterson says, "This is the world we were fed, and the words feel like a punch to the stomach." But the internet is divided, because while some blame Janice entirely, others now argue that she may have been a product of her own exploitation, her own circumstances, her own survival tactics. She has openly admitted to working in certain environments that shaped her life, but even that does not justify what some commentators are calling the most disturbing rumor yet, the speculation that Diddy and his mother engaged in behavior far beyond normal boundaries. Viewers still reference a viral clip of the two of them together, where Diddy made an offhand remark about her flexibility, specifically how she could touch the floor with both palms flat. And the comment was so uncomfortable, so strangely phrased, that social media brought the clip back into circulation with captions like, "This family dynamic has never been normal." Every layer of this story feels like a deeper descent into something twisted, something painful, something that was never meant to reach the light. And yet here we are, watching it unfold piece by horrifying piece. The moment you think this saga cannot possibly sink any deeper, another layer of chaos unravels. When people first stumbled across the strange hints buried inside Kirk Burroughs' lawsuit earlier this year, they assumed it was just legal mudslinging. But now, with all these new revelations, those old claims suddenly read like warning sirens that everyone ignored. According to Kirk, Janice was not just aware of Diddy's schemes, she allegedly helped him orchestrate them. He claimed she played a role in enabling her son to siphon money from bad boy artists and even assisted him in maneuvering away Kirk's own 25% stake in the label. And while that alone could fuel an entire season of scandal commentary, this story refuses to stop expanding. Because the biggest question everyone is asking now is simple: was Janice willingly helping him, or was she trapped? For years, fans believed she was a willing accomplice. And honestly, who could blame them? Every time Diddy faced public backlash or legal fire, Janice would rush forward as his first line of defense. One of the most infamous examples came when rumors started buzzing that federal investigators were preparing to bring Diddy in for questioning. Right in the middle of the media storm, Janice suddenly fell ill, complaining of intense chest pain and being rushed to the hospital. TMZ reported that the cause was unclear, but sources close to Diddy insisted her condition was connected to overwhelming stress from her son's mounting legal troubles. At the time, social media rolled its eyes so hard it nearly dislocated a collective neck. People accused her of playing the sympathy mother card, accusing critics of being heartless for not buying it. She was dragged for enabling him, coddling him, shielding him. But now, after learning about the allegations of violence toward her, the entire story looks disturbingly different. It no longer appears to be loyalty. It looks like fear. It looks like survival. Psychologists have long warned that victims who are dominated by their abusers often adopt a distorted emotional lens, one where empathy replaces anger and loyalty disguises terror. Studies describe how individuals who identify strongly with their aggressor lose a sense of their own agency, becoming mentally subordinate to the very person harming them. And that eerily mirrors the descriptions we keep hearing about Diddy and Janice's dynamic. People close to the family have always called their relationship strange, codependent, and uncomfortably intertwined. Suddenly, all those years of Janice defending him seem less like complicity, and more like a woman trying to avoid triggering the same violence she allegedly endured behind closed doors. And then comes the moment that sent shockwaves across the internet. Right before Diddy's trial began, Janice released a polished public statement defending her son yet again, condemning the world for turning against him, calling the allegations lies motivated by people chasing a payout. She sounded firm. She sounded rehearsed. She sounded like a press release wrapped in maternal grief. But fans immediately raised their eyebrows. The wording, the tone, the structure, none of it sounded like her. Commenters said it read like something drafted in a conference room by legal strategists, not handwritten by a worried mother. And as people revisited every past interview and every red carpet moment between the two of them, a haunting realization settled in: Janice might not have been speaking for herself at all. She might have been following instructions. And the tragedy does not stop there. Even with all of these disturbing allegations floating around, claims of violence, manipulation, humiliation, Janice still publicly insists that nothing ever happened. She denies every accusation. She rejects every eyewitness testimony. She paints anyone who speaks up as a liar seeking attention. And the internet is split clean down the middle. Half of users view her as a guilty enabler trying to salvage her son's legacy, while the other half see a woman so deeply traumatized that she cannot afford to acknowledge her own past. Because acknowledging it would mean admitting she never escaped it. Her most recent statement, responding specifically to Tim Patterson's claims, is a perfect example. She called the allegations false, malicious, and designed solely to promote the documentary. But her wording, again, feels eerily familiar, clinical, detached, legally sanitized. It reads less like a wounded mother defending her truth and more like a script handed to her by a team determined to maintain control of the narrative. And that is the darkest twist of all. After everything she allegedly endured, she still might not be allowed to speak in her own voice. This entire situation feels like watching a slow-motion collision between truth, trauma, and power. And every new revelation makes the line between victim and participant blur even further. When Janice finally spoke out, the internet expected clarity, but what she delivered felt more like a desperate attempt to hold together a collapsing story. Her statement, firm, steady, and disturbingly polished, claimed that Kirk Burroughs' accusations about Diddy slapping her during the City College tragedy were false and fabricated. But as soon as those words hit the timeline, people felt the tension beneath them. Because that night in 1991 was a nightmare burned into New York's memory, 9 lives lost, hundreds panicking, sirens screaming, chaos swallowing the air. It was the type of tragedy that fractures entire communities. And yet, Janice insisted that in the middle of that devastation, nothing violent happened between her and her son. She painted Kirk's claim as a story invented long after the fact, a rumor fed by hindsight and opportunism. But the internet was quick to point out how oddly rehearsed her tone sounded, almost as if every sentence had been weighed by someone standing just outside the frame. And that is what makes her denial feel so complicated. Because in moments of public crisis, especially when secrets begin to leak, people respond in unpredictable ways. They cling to memories that soothe them, rewrite the past to protect themselves, or repeat narratives crafted by others. And Janice's world has always been the epicenter of pressure, fame, power, lawsuits, fear, reputation, money, control. A world where the truth bends easily, because bending it becomes a survival strategy. The internet has been debating her motives relentlessly. Is she lying? Is she protecting him? Is she protecting herself? Or has she been trapped inside this narrative for so long that even she no longer knows where the truth ends and the performance begins? What makes this even more disturbing is how common this pattern is. Victims defending their abusers is not rare, it is heartbreakingly frequent. Trauma has a way of twisting loyalty into something unrecognizable. It clouds memory, weakens resistance, reshapes identity until the victim becomes emotionally tethered to the very person who harmed them. Shame, fear, longing, denial, these emotions braid themselves together, making truth feel dangerous and silence feel safe. Outsiders judge from a distance, asking why a victim protects someone who hurt them. But inside that emotional storm, the answer is painfully simple: the brain protects itself in the only way it knows how. Just look at Gina Huney. Her behavior confused the entire internet. She had already gone public with allegations against Diddy, telling Tasha K that he physically abused her. She spoke plainly, with the voice of someone carrying years of pain. The world saw her as another victim finally stepping into the light. But then, out of nowhere, she wrote a letter to the judge praising him, urging compassion, claiming he was a good man who did not deserve prison. The whiplash shocked even the most seasoned commentators. How does someone go from preparing to testify against a man to openly defending him? But those who study trauma immediately recognize the pattern. Victims are not linear. Their emotions collide with loyalty, fear, history, and manipulation. The mind rewrites pain when facing the person who caused it. Denial becomes a life raft. Defense becomes a reflex. To an outsider it looks contradictory, to a survivor, it feels like the only way to breathe. And that is why Janice's behavior mirrors Gina's so eerily. Because the bond between a victim and an abuser is intense enough, but the bond between a mother and her child is something entirely different. People speak as if motherhood can be paused, as if a mother can disconnect herself emotionally and judge her child like a stranger. But that is not how motherhood works. A mother sees every version of her son, not just the powerful mogul, not just the public scandal, but the child she raised. That emotional history complicates everything. Even when the world sees guilt, a mother may see someone worth saving. Even when others demand justice, a mother may cling to denial because accepting the truth would shatter something inside her. And that maternal instinct, to protect, to justify, to shelter, can be as strong as any trauma bond. So when Gina defends him and Janice defends him, it is not shocking at all. These emotional reversals happen because trauma is messy. Humans are messy. Victims flip between truth and denial, pain and protection. One moment they want accountability, the next they want peace, the next they want the past to vanish. And mothers? Mothers often defend their sons even when the whole world is telling them not to. It is not logic, it is instinct layered with trauma. But what people forget is that distortions happen on the other side too. Outsiders create narratives for their own benefit, people like Kirk, who inserted himself into the emotional tragedy of 1991 with a story that may not belong to him at all. Fame inflates every rumor, turning private moments into public fanfiction. Some individuals create lies for relevance, some for revenge, some because they simply want their version of the story to replace the truth. Once someone becomes a public figure, reality becomes a battlefield for competing narratives. And that is why Janice ended her statement with such fierce determination. She refused to let one of the worst nights of her life, the City College stampede, be rewritten as a personal melodrama between her and her son. She insisted that tragedy brings families closer, not further apart. She reminded everyone that while the world was collapsing around them, they clung to each other, not ripped each other apart. It was a plea for people to stop treating real grief like entertainment. But the deeper truth underneath all of this is unavoidable. Trauma, loyalty, shame, and public scrutiny twist every story into something nearly unrecognizable. Victims defend abusers. Mothers defend sons. Outsiders twist narratives. And somewhere in the middle lies a truth that nobody can fully grasp anymore. Not because it is hidden, but because human nature itself is too tangled, too emotional, too flawed for clean answers. And when all those threads intertwine, victim psychology, maternal loyalty, opportunistic lies, and decades of buried pain, the picture that emerges stops being confusing. It becomes entirely predictable. This is what happens when trauma meets power, when love meets fear, when truth collides with performance. And in that chaos, everyone involved clings to the version of reality that hurts them the least. When you step back and look at the entire pattern, the strange loyalty, the extreme denial, the defensive interviews, the perfectly timed hospital incident, and the insiders who all echo the same ominous warnings, the entire picture shifts. It becomes clear that Janice was never the architect people believed she was. She was not sculpting Diddy into anything, she was surviving him. And once you allow that possibility into the narrative, everything clicks into place with a disturbing clarity. The myth of Janice as a cold strategist, the behind-the-scenes mastermind, the shadowy matriarch pulling strings, that persona crumbles instantly. Because what insiders describe is not a woman running an empire, but a woman trying not to be swallowed by it. And if even half the unseen footage is as damning as those insiders claim, then Janice was never the villain fans imagined. She was a casualty hiding in plain sight. But the part that has the internet spiraling is the documentary's strategic silence. The omissions are too clean, too